Right. Okay, for the last bit, I promise you I hope it's interesting, but I won't go too far into this, because I know that the span of attention of everyone here is maybe big, but still limited. Still, I think we will refresh them a bit and I'll move away from being in the line of sight of the gentleman. By all means, please, if anyone in the audience wants to say something, I'll arrange that as possible. So let's keep this lively. We've had 3 interesting talks. Erik has explicitly addressed emergence as opposed to design. Jan has done less so, not very much, but he has positioned it. It's basically, they don't bite, right? They're complementary. Jan didn't talk about it, but certainly what he talked about doesn't bite emergence. And then Jim has talked a bit more about emergence and emergence as a phenomenon without mentioning it too much.
Without mentioning design.
We're going to talk mostly about emergence anyway. Let me start by asking 3 of you, but also the audience, the question: how urgent is it that we spend more time addressing emergence? How important is it to address this problem of emergence to get things going better than they do now? And I will give the speakers the first. But I think you want to put that watch. Yes, Erik, I can see you want to.
Well, I was thinking, a while ago, I made a long train journey, and at the end there were 2 cities we visited, Beijing and Shanghai. And if you look around those cities, new companies sprout up and disappear at an incredible rate. To me, that's really showing how the speed of emergence, in the sense of new things forming and disappearing. So to me, the question about emergence and linked to economic survival is a no-brainer. We need emergence. Purely from that perspective. Separate from the fact that I think Jim's story clearly tells us that emergence is anywhere, everywhere anyway.
But if it's there anyway. Why bother? You know, it will just happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the point? Is that so? That would make it omnipresent but not urgent.
I think we got away with it mostly so far.
Have we? Anyone? I thought it would be.
What I envision on this moment is that in nowadays society, systems will outpace humanity, if I may say it bluntly. That means that from an emergence perspective, if we need to claim our own destiny as human beings, we really need to know more about what emergence does and how to influence it. Maybe how to intervene, how to redirect it, and so on. Society is full of crises at this moment, and still coming more, because network effects will arise more. Hierarchical effects we came from, network effects we get. So really, emergence is becoming more omnipresent than it already is. So to me, urgence is.
Your response to this?
No, not in particular to Fran's comments, but can I say something more in general? Oh, yeah, everything is fine, isn't it? I think the notion of emergence is not something that makes much sense to me, but that something is emergent, as opposed to what Erik called artificially or whatever designed, brought about. And I see 2 types of emergent things. The one, which was, I must admit, hidden in my presentation, that is the very notion of organization. So that one slide in which I had communication, the background, and then action, information, and organization. That means to me that if people who we consider to be constituents of an organization do not communicate, there is no organization to me. So organization is emergent in their communication. Some of the communication is quite structured, that is that transaction idea, or the game of entering to complying with commitments related to the things that you collectively want to achieve. The other emergent thing is the new organization. So we have the running one, the new, that's what I positioned within governance. So next to the people in communication bring about organization, to the extent that you could say people are the organization. And the other one is that they also are the next organization. And if the changes they envision are small, then I agree with Erik particularly, but it was not so much addressed by Jim. Oh, well, I think too. So small changes are brought about just as they go. Yeah, that's small. Larger ones needs to that more people are involved. So somehow you have to put it in a process of development, of designing a new change and verifying, validating it, all these kind of things, and then in the end implementing the change. Yeah. Okay, that's what I wanted to add for the moment. So there are two ways, two notions, in fact.
Yeah, well, I personally believe that it has never, ever, ever been so important. The reason that I believe this, I am a great disciple, I would say, even of what I regard as one of the greatest communication theoreticians ever, a Canadian who died 60 years ago named Harold Innis. And one of the things that Harold Innis said was that organization is entirely dependent, not entirely dependent, but highly dependent on media. And one of the things that, the way he distinguished this, he said there are media that are heavy. And of course, he went back to a time when people wrote on stones and in various other kinds of ways. And what you had in that time were societies that were built like this. They were very vertical, and they were limited in scope. He said then, but if you introduce communication that are dependent on space, namely allow for the extending outwards of communication to larger and larger and larger over larger distances, you change the nature of organization profoundly. And it's not whether a question whether you want to or don't want to, it's going to happen. And it's emergent precisely in that sense. Now, and the other thing he said, and this is where I do believe that design is incredibly important. I haven't talked about it because I'm not in that field, but I believe it's incredibly important. And because you have to design in that world, in a world that is no longer, I mentioned 1975. I can tell you the communication media that were accessible to me in 1975 had nothing to do with what I could have now, except I no longer can use them because they're so complicated. I know they're getting simpler, yes, but they're not. And the result is that everybody now has these extended networks. And that creates a very different kind of organization. If you look at it from my perspective, the exercise of authority is changing very fast. If you doubted that, look at the Arab Spring. If there's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that the nature of technology, the communication technologies that is available now around the world is changing the nature of government itself. What I worry about is the design community itself. Because what I know about the design community is the same as every other community on earth. It's very conservative, and it has trouble changing. And in fact, there are terrifically strongly built-in constraints on the design community itself, that the engineering world is an engineering world that changes slower. The internal world of engineering changes slower than the world outside. And this is also, Harold Innis said, what happens is you get a gap between the center of knowledge and the nature of knowledge, which is highly elaborated, but is more and more out of touch with the communities it should be serving. And in my opinion, we're running that risk. And I don't see, personally, very much realization of that in the academic community I know. Now
May I comment, respond to that? Yeah, I feel a bit offended, Jim. Okay, it's a big word. But what do you mean? I mean, you talked about all these new telecommunication technology, and at the same time you say there's a conservative world. But they brought us the new things that you use. They made possible that the new kind of organization that in which geographical boundaries do not more exist, actually.
Well, they do exist. There are always
but I mean,
different.
They're different. I mean, so what do you mean by this engineering community that is conservative? Do you mean only related to organizations, to enterprises?
You can answer that better than I can.
I'm trying, but
I don't know the engineering community well enough. I thought I would just be provocative.
Oh, no. What I can. Okay. Okay. Then you succeeded. You succeeded in.
I'll grasp the helm for a minute. You see, so really, I mean, emergence. It wasn't really fair to ask you about emergence because from the beginning, really, this whole theme has been about emergence as opposed to or in combination with design, as Jan has actually already summarized immediately. So maybe the big question would be, is it a dichotomy to say we have design versus emergence? Some people have already suggested it isn't. But how does this work? Because people, the way people design now accept maybe in a marginal fashion, like you do iterations, so maybe you adapt to some information you get. But it doesn't seem to be embraced in full. And we still see, even if it's not in terms of ordering your activities, because we all do things iteratively or claim we do, but there's still the logic, of course, of why, before what, before how. I'm not, of course, suggesting that we let that logic go, but maybe in design is still really stuck in that, even though we sort of fix things by doing iterations. So just dropping that, is it a dichotomy? Is it a strong opposition that you have design versus emergence, or not? And how to deal with this?
You look at me, okay. No, it's not a dichotomy. I would say it's you need both, and they're also not opposed. They can go together. Well, I said it in fact before. Design is something that you need if changes are too big. Now the main problem, coming back now to this offensive comment by Jim, is that I think the things we do, and I found this example of the New Zealand police marvelous. We have similar experiences in our country, as we know. The major thing for us who are trying to do this, bring about these changes, is that we are very, very unprofessional, that we do not have the appropriate knowledge. And what I see in practice every time, and I also saw it in Jim's talk about that police thing, is that we very soon are not anymore able to intellectually manage what we do. And then you get whatever disaster you can think of. I mean, that is always going on. That's also the Dutch police going on. So, the major reason why the two delegations of Air France Cargo and KLM Cargo are able now to be constructive sitting at the table is that they are able to intellectually manage it. They have the overview, the insight that they need. And now they can sensibly talk about all things that have to be done. And if you do not have such a picture, so if you do not have a theory, and from that theory, the appropriate conception of the thing you are dealing with, you have to change, well, it's obvious then you're lost if you don't. Even in the small things that you do. And that is what I see as the major problem, one of the major problems in our world now.
The KLM in France example you gave, I think, is a very interesting illustration. A very interesting. Talking about technology, I mean, it should be, you should be hovering just automatically.
You should not see so relaxed. You
I know, but this is old-fashioned technology. I mean, the example, I think, really shows something very important that was conjuring in my mind since Jim's presentation, in the sense that we look at engineering and design as something where we think deliberate about the next state. What happened in the way I listened to you about the KLM France case was that using engineering knowledge, engineering principles, you created a dialogue between two organizations, and in a dialogue, using a reflection on the design of the current organization and potential designs of the future organization, you created a dialogue where we could be using scientific principles that talk about a specific design in general, but you use that to fuel the discussion, to debunk design flaws. But the more important part is both the dialogue and the interaction with the insights, the scientific principles of engineering, with the insight. So that way we shift from designing the next state towards understanding the past and also structuring the dialogue about future states. So altering the enterprise using insight from engineering principles rather than saying, okay, now we're going to sit down and design the next state. I think that should be a major shift in the sense of we're not sitting down and designing the next state, we create this dialogue and also continuously reflect on what do we see in terms of what is in the organization, how its current design is, and start understanding that.
In your presentation, you talked about appreciation of the situation. The insight you mentioned now is mostly design principles, scientific if you like. Or maybe
the scientific principle.
Right. But where's the appreciation of things, coming up out of the bog of your actual organisation? Where does that come in?
That could be a future role of enterprise architects, engineers, whatever name we're going to put on it, but it's a bit like a mining activity in terms of observing what happened, like history, understanding the history, like archaeology, organizational archaeology, what happened, what is happening, what are the trends, where are things moving. So rather than prescriptive future designing, also looking back at what happens, what are the trends, and where are we going.
You gave me a nice little nugget there to pursue, which is the word mining, and I'm sure that many of you will see, oh, that's where we're going. Well, we have this group in Eindhoven, quite famous good work, Wilhelm Else is having it. They have this notion, most of you will know it, so they're very big about it, process mining. And in a way, and maybe I'm grossly, well, I'm just very not very nuanced here about that, but in a way, what they do is they don't design processes as such, just by thinking well about them. They also look at the actual processes in the organization. They do this by means of technology, so what they do is they look at all sorts of artifacts, communications, etc. They tap it from the systems in the company, and they derive processes. They basically claim to say, look, this is what's actually happened. It may not actually be what you want there to be. It may not be what you design, what's desirable, but this is what there is, and then, well, you can do your advantage with that. Is that a way of tapping into, in a very literal sense, tapping into emergence? And could we use it?
No, I would say you can use it for redesign. So what you can learn from the difference between what you thought things are going and how things actually are going, And so that provides you with knowledge for thinking of the new design, how you would like it to be in the future. And so it is, acquiring knowledge like you also could do in interviewing. This is, let's say, a more automatic way of extracting organizational knowledge out of how things have been going. Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's fair enough.
Obviously, it would be very far-fetched to say, okay, this would automatically lead to changes in the organization.
Of course. Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah, okay, that's a question there. So, now I want to finish this thing first. I'm not going to interrupt myself that properly. So, in a minute. You say, okay, it can inform design, that's clear, right? To build in an automatic relationship between this mining and then changing the organization would be very far-fetched. However, there is this matter of authority, because if you define the source of emergence, maybe this mining, maybe the processes around, you tap them, you chart them, so you chart what you see is happening. What sort of authority would you want to grant that? Because you can say, oh, it's interesting to know, but now let's still design. You could also say this is some sort of force that cannot be really ignored that much. So that would mean that you give it a bigger role in your design. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think it's important, at least in what we've seen, that the people who actually use the design, I am very, very sympathetic to design, by the way. I have used demo model in my own thinking. I have introduced it into my own way of observing. I'm not in any way opposed, I hope that's clear, I'm not in any way opposed to the principle of design. I think, however, there is a question of ownership, that it's not just enough to stand back and design, that part of the responsibility that goes with design is transferring ownership. And that is a very different kind of part of the design challenge to me. It's giving the ownership to people, because if they don't feel that they authored it themselves, then it's a foreign authorship. It's a foreign authority. It's extremely strong feeling in people that they must have authority over their own activities, because otherwise they can't continue to do them. I know that there is another tendency, which is to say, I can't answer that because I'm just doing that because I'm told to do it. That's a way out. But if you look at those organizations where people say that, it's because they don't work very well. That people, if they're going to be effective employees, they have to own it. They have to feel that they are the authors of it. And how to do that is, it seems to me, a matter of communication. That is, in fact, part of the communication problem is not just syntactic or semantic, it is pragmatic. That is to say that the design must include a consideration of the authority relationships that both involve who is involved with using them, but also involve the designer. That the designer also is not some outsider, some kind of subject working on an object, but from the point of view of the people who are being affected, it's just another person. That's what I was trying to show, is that there must be a consideration of that other dimension, which is the negotiation of authorship.
Okay, there was lots of people in the audience, so I'm going to what's behind you.
When Erik spoke about emergence, I heard him talking about, well, the way it changes people are small parts of the organizations, but in the final talk we heard a lot about the hierarchy and authority within organizations, and the way people within an organization or outside of an organization start both regarding the organization as an entity or person, and also using it as a point of reference. Would any of you say that entity and that the organization is so at the highest level can also show emergence, Or would you say that the organizational entity is always reliant on the emergence of the people within the organization? So would you say the entity of the organization can show emergence, which the people within it then have to follow? Or is the entity that the organization is always following the emergence of the people within the organization?
Stephen Barley, who is a very, very a fine student of organization at the university, Stanford University, at Stanford University in California. Stephen Barley makes a distinction between what he calls the authority of expertise and the authority of position. One of the things he got to, because the article I'm thinking of, he was looking at the nature of specialized work and how it's changing in our society. And it clearly, at that time, 1996, this is now 15, 16 years ago, so it's some time ago. But he was looking at the fact that there are whole fields that emerge because of new technologies, primarily because we endlessly are introducing new technologies, and each of them requires its own special kind of expertise. And what he then pointed to, the curious phenomenon is that in an organization, there is, as usual, a line of authority. All those quotations I cited earlier are about the line of authority, and that, of course, is a lining up of positions. Each position having been defined as possessing a certain area of authority. You arrive at the actual practice itself, which is evolving very fast. And the people who are involved in that practice are learning very fast. And they're developing new language, they're developing new techniques because they have to. They confront challenges that haven't been there before, both in terms of needs that society is generating to them through customers or whatever, but also through the fact that they're using new technologies that have to be learned. And technologies don't. The word technology does not mean, if you look at the origin of the word, it's in Greek, it does not refer to the tool, but to the technique. It's the use of it by people that is the technology. So they're learning. And now people at the bottom of the line of authority know more than the people who are supposed to be supervising them. And this is a very serious problem. Because, and it was the problem of, by the way, of police, that in the case of where the development of technology occurred in the New Zealand police, the people who were involved in that learned a lot. What I was trying to show, what we were trying to show through some of the excerpts, they were learning. They were learning a lot. But the people at the top were not. They were people who had risen to the top as policemen, not as people developing technology. And now you have a gap between the authority of position and the authority of expertise. How do you deal with that? Clearly, there isn't any an immediate, to me, logical response except emergence. That is to say, the positions have to begin to reflect the expertise, and they do. It's not that they don't, but that there is, in other words, now what you've got is learning fast at one level, learning slower at the level that is officially in position of authority above it. And I think that a lot of organizations encounter difficulties. My last slide, which I didn't get around to showing, was a citation from the communications of the ACM, in which said that only about 40% of ERPs can be said to succeed at all. And that was, I say, I've quoted that from the communications because I thought, yes, implementing change occurs both in terms of the learning at the level of the use itself. And I think that's incredibly important. I mean, this is where emergence is. The line of authority, and which sits on top of that, tends to change more slowly, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, that's the hypothesis that we are working on in terms of our current work.
So you'd say emergence
I think emergence happens at different paces, at different speeds in different places of the organization. I think in some cases it happens very fast, and it's because of design. You know, you put in a new design, people have to learn it fast, and they do learn. They have to adapt, they have to adjust. There can be resistance, sure, but in general, people learn that they learn fast. But the organization is not just at one level. It has, and it has to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an organization. And so you've got this built-in difference in terms of relative emergence. In other words, I would like to see a theory of relative emergence.
Yeah, comment. Okay, I was now triggered by your last comment, but I will not respond to that now. I would like in this context to report from this activity that is going on within the Royal Netherlands Marechaussee, which is a police-like organization.
Yeah.
Yeah? And they have also maybe 4 levels of authority, of management levels, I must say. 2 things. The first one is a common experience in many projects, that is that if you have authority, you're only able to exercise it if you are able to overview, have insight in what you're doing. Otherwise, you get that typical management behavior of avoiding risks, etc., and doing the same as other people do. And now the other thing is that people think in police organizations, but also in production companies, that you need managers to keep these people working, and that's nonsense. That's Taylorian. How do you say that in English? Tayloristic thinking.
It's not mine.
No, it's no, but you are the grandson, or not? And so, what happened in the Marechaussee organization is that we clarified how authorities are distributed in the organization. We make them transparent to the people who had the authority, apparently, but who always say, "Hey, is that me? I didn't know that." Yeah, that's one thing. What happens? So the work floor people, lowest level employees, have got an enrichment of their understanding of what they do, the jobs, and the highest level. So I've also have talked to the chief, which is a general, and he said to me, "Oh, now I have another problem. I don't know whether I need all these management levels, because if I now understand that if I give appropriate authority to people who are competent, of course, then they are very much self-managing. So what is the role?" I said, "That's a very good question. Think about it." Yeah, I mean, so I have an answer, but I don't give it to you. You just think of it. And that's what's, there's another way of looking at it. Okay, that was what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. Anyone?
I think in commercial organizations, the emergence will be more rewarded because it will increase competition. And I think so. I think there it will be easier to incorporate our organization, commercial, the private sector. And I think this problem of management and what to do with it and to make these changes are much more present in public organizations. Implementing that.
I don't believe that it is true. No, my personal experience that is not a distinction that really matters. So this competition you refer to, or let's say the need to innovate and to be aware of what is going on and to respond quickly, to agility. That also holds for the Royal Netherlands Marechaussee. It's not this unknown grey thing that we will sometimes see on television. No, these are people working in the field, and yeah, I mean, there's not a competitor in the market if you say that, but it is so a kind of inherent need to show that you improve your performance always also. There's some pressure also on that, public also, public as well as governmental.
But there's one distinction, in even closer. I think there's one distinction in the sense that the marechaussee, the army, the police, the people who work in those organizations have to deal with a variety of situations where they must act and must make decisions locally. Whereas if you work in an administrative organization, it's much easier in the sense that you have a fixed context, so it's much easier to hide behind rules, to hide behind authority, so play the authority games. You don't go out there into the angry world where you have to act now. And having the culture of having to act now, I think that sets those two types of public organizations apart. And that might make the police, the army, etc., much more entrepreneurial in this sense. Than compared to say a tax office or a tax administration, where you can hide behind rules, or the administrative departments of universities. They're typically hiding behind rules.
True.
I have a question, Jan. One of the things that you seem to be suggesting with this design and going at a situation with the frameworks with which you understand it, is offering the people in the situation concepts to deal with the situation. You called it conflict and intellectual or something like that?
Intellectual manageability.
Yeah.
Just understanding what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very important to have something like that, to understand. But I was wondering, you were referring to the Kailan case, where Kailan and Air France.
Yeah.
I was wondering, bring something with which they can manage intellectually into the situation, or do they make it while discussing their problems? I mean, do these tools for managing intellectually, do they make them while discussing, while learning, while disagreeing, or do you bring them in and they don't change at all?
Okay. No. Look, these two delegations are really two delegations, one from Air France, one from KLM, the two cargo divisions, and they got the task, see how you can put these two organizations together, make an integration and be more cost effective, of course. Yeah. And okay, now imagine two delegations, well-educated, intelligent people, sitting on both sides of the table, but sitting like this, like Erik. Not trusting the other ones. Why not trusting? Because, no, but why do delegations never trust each other? One of the main reasons is, maybe more. In this case, the only thing was that they didn't know what was going on. They didn't manage intellectually what they were doing. So you sit then, and I've seen it in many other situations, and you think, okay, we have to come up with ideas to do something, but you are not going to take parts of me more than I from you. Yeah? But the problem is, you do not know. You cannot grasp it. Now, what they have now, by making the enterprise ontological model, which is on an A2 sheet of paper, is that they do understand it. They really understand on an abstract level, but clearly, and that has never been shown before, that it's really about their business. It shows authorities and how authorities deal together in order to achieve things. And they are able to just say, okay, then we take this part, how shall we do this in the future? Have we implemented it now in Air France? How is it implemented now in KLM? What kind of all tools, equipment, aids do we have in place now? And then you can have sensible discussions. So the people are so happy that you offer them just the means to understand what they are doing. I mean, that's it.
And that's the thirdness. That's what that's part of what I meant by the thirdness. The third was what allowed them to overcome their two-party suspicions.
So what's being suggested and before is that the method, and knowing what to do and having a method for charging that, is providing a useful third that people can point to. So that's a direct link to methodology, which I think is useful.
Yeah. I was wondering, that's what my question was about, I wasn't very clear, obviously, was whether they needed any discussion to decide what all these bits and pieces that the model consists of mean to both of them. Because I can imagine that there's all kinds of squares and lines and...
No, that's not, it's
or
not...
did you just drop the toolkit and they accept?
No. People from KLM who were trained in demo made after 6-7 months of not proceeding, just sitting together and okay. They produced it for KLM Cargo. They put it on the table and said to the Air France people, what if we from now on discuss on the basis of such an understanding? Yes, a model is a way of understanding. That would help us. It has helped KLM people in many other activities. Now, the first thing was, of course, that French people said, yes, but we don't know this, and in addition, this is not French. No, okay. So this takes some time.
Say that first, actually.
They said that. So it took some time, and then they allowed the KLM people to make that ontological model of Air France cargo, thinking, oh, that's so different. So, because if you look at the two cargos, if you just, you could say walk in or see all other descriptions, they are very, very different. That's always the case. But the difference is always in the implementation, the way you are doing things, not the essence. So they came up with exactly the same, which I could have predicted, of course. There's only one difference, one transaction that was outsourced by the one and performed by the other internally. That was the picking of goods at the airport in the trucks. So one of them, I don't remember which one, it was the company's responsibility to do that, and the other one it was outsourced to the trucking company. Well, okay. So, and then it took, of course, some time to see that Dutch people have learned you something, taught you something, and that you have learned from Dutch people. I mean, French people are very, very different. I've trained some of them now, but it's not easy. So that is what happens. So the main thing is that enterprise ontology offers you an understanding that you didn't have before, but that you badly need in order to know what you are doing. And on that basis, there is no hostility anymore. You can trust the other one because you understand what he's trying to do or telling. And you come to effective, ideas that have to be implemented. And ideas may emerge. I mean, fine. It's just
I would suggest that's actually a final remark for which I would like your response. I would suggest that if you're essential enough for something that doesn't obviously change that much, or also providing the fact that the French eventually found out that they did the same thing mostly, that emergence on that level is not expected to occur that intensively. So you wouldn't need that. So you can actually avoid emergence a bit by looking at the essence? Would that be?
No, you cannot avoid emergence. You also shouldn't do that. No, but that your comment was right that changes at the ontological level are rare. So it's very stable. And what it does is it shows you what the deep structure of your organization is, and that it is now implemented in this way, and by understanding that you can easily devise, even if you do not implement it, another way of doing it, but you also can then implement it, and you manage what you do, you understand what you do, and you manage also the process of bringing about the change. And the changes are always on the low level. It is replacing the one technology by the other. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. That clarifies something for me, sure. Okay, we're drawing to an end now. So there's drinks waiting for those who want to participate in that. Please do. Just as a symbolic gesture, mostly, I would like, first of all, of course, to thank you all, Jim, John, Erik, Elizabeth, you all for being present. And I'm just asking, basically, for a final remark. I'll do that in order of the presentation. So first of all, I'll ask Erik for a final remark or something to take on.
Ooh.
Yep.
Ooh. My mind is buzzing a little bit in the sense I'm trying to put a few things on the spot, but something I take home is that I'm going to do a little bit more thinking about the role of engineering, in the sense that what I already pointed at is the distinction between we mechanically design the next step or versus offering a conscious in terms of the line of reasoning about the organization. What I see happening in the Scalema France case is that they uncovered a certain truth that guided the rest of the discussions. So I think the role of engineering can be like the role of logic has been in clarifying argumentation.
Philosophy as well, yeah.
Yeah. And I think with an enterprise engineering discipline, we can create a kind of a logic of enterprise construction.
Which would be a third in German, yes.
Yeah. And we can use that one to structure such dialogues, both understanding the current, but also the future. At the same time, with some humbleness in the sense that if there are people with a political agenda, even when the truth is out there, they will deviate. But that's part of the game then.
Thank you. Yeah?
Yeah, I have had the time to think of it,
Yeah.
while not listening to what Erik was saying.
I'll explain afterwards.
Yeah, okay. I think I like to stress something that I have already said. I was very amazed and puzzled the first time, it was in 1996, at the district of at that time, PTT Telecom company in the Netherlands. And we had explained the meaning of a demo model to a number of people, employees, so the working people. And that after they had understood it, one of them said to me, hey, so that, pointed to an actor, that's me. And I looked at him and said, yes, because that's what you told me. I'm so happy, he said. I said, why? I never have seen that. So I am responsible for that. He said, yes, didn't you know that? No. I said, but you know what to do. Oh, yes. And I also get good marks from my boss, because I do my work good. But I never had this way of looking at it, this insight. Now, my final remark is that I think by doing this, we can let people much more use their abilities in any organization. So at the moment, what I see is that maybe 10 or 20% of their abilities is really used. And on the other side, so I also, the Tayloristic managers, I do not understand, because if you would use them fully, they would produce much more. So why wouldn't you do that? Yeah. So, but to let people really be a part of the organization and let them be creative, innovative, and they will do. I have seen it happening. Yeah. So so that was the third objective also of enterprise engineering, and for me it's becoming maybe the most important objective. To really let human beings be complete human beings again in organizations. And by by assigning them the authority that you want to give them and that is needed in the whole structure of the organization, and then let them be responsible fully, then you get the best organization. There are a few examples, by the way. I now only remember one, that is that Gore-Tex company in the US. There are several more. Nordstrom is another one. That's a chain of stores. There, the people are really, really colleagues, and there's a culture in these organizations that makes the best of all of them. That's what I mean. Yeah. Okay. That's my.
Thank you. No, beautiful thought. Okay, Jen, final word for you.
It's going to be a very personal remark. It's wonderful to be here because there's another kind of emergence. The field that I work in is so different, and it's with coming here is once again like being back in lab. It obliges me to think in terms of formalisms, which is a very foreign way of thinking to the people I usually interact with. And I think vice versa, I hope that we can also, from our side, bring the perceptions of the actual implementation of design in contexts with all its remarkable human richness in terms of social interaction. So I would say let's see if we can't promote more interaction among ourselves, because I think that's where design itself, it seems to me, is a creative enterprise, has to be a creative enterprise. Logical up to a point, but in the end, you have to also, the design has to be responsive to the reality outside, and reality is always more complex than our models of it.
Thank you very much. We'll do our best. That will give me opportunity to add one final D4, which is drinks.